Hello, welcome to the Pumphouse Brewery and Pumphouse Beer Education. The training video you are about to see explains the basics of beer, what it is, and how it is brewed. The purpose of this video is to provide you with the understanding and knowledge you need to answer questions from our guests about beer and the Pumphouse brewing process. You are going to see how we take these four basic ingredients, water, barley, yeast, and hops, and turn them into this beer. First, let's talk about the history of beer. Beer is as old as recorded history, mentioned in the Old Testament of the Bible, as well as residue of beer being found in old Egyptian clay pots. In Mesopotamia, the oldest evidence of beer is believed to be a 6,000-year-old Sumerian tablet depicting people drinking a beverage through reed straws from a communal bowl. A 4,000-year-old Sumerian poem honoring Ninkasi, the patron goddess of brewing, contains the oldest surviving beer recipe describing the production of beer from barley via bread. It is not sure how humans originally started making beer, but it is not unreasonable to assume that they might have done it quite by accident. One could see how a pot of grain could have gotten wet with rainwater and then easily started fermenting with natural yeast. Maybe the farmer then tasted it and found it to be something interesting, and then started experimenting. Beer has developed throughout the centuries, with modern beer hailing back to Marco Polo bringing the first lager yeast to Europe from China. From there, the monks continued to perfect the process. Certainly, beer could not have been as good as it is today, due to the limited ingredients, lack of scientific understanding, and uncontrolled temperatures. Now to the basic ingredients. As I said, beer is made from four main things: water, grain is usually barley, but commonly includes other grains such as wheat, corn, oats, etc., hops, and yeast. And there are many varieties and possible combination of these basic items. All the various styles of beer can be developed from these four main ingredients. Further, styles can be enhanced by using other materials and flavorings such as chocolates, fruits, and spices. A word about yeast. There are two main types of yeast, lager and ale yeast. Lager yeast is used for the common type of pilsner such as Coors and Budweiser. It ferments at a cooler temperature, takes longer, and usually provides a crisp, clean flavor. Ale yeast, by comparison, ferments at room temperature, usually quite quickly in around 3 days, and provides more earthy or estery flavors. So now, let's get on to the process of making beer. The process begins with the recipe. Each recipe is modeled on an Excel spreadsheet where the various parameters of the beer are calculated. The grain bill itemizes the various types and amounts of malted barley and other grains. These grains ultimately provide the sugars that are consumed during fermentation. The hop addition schedule lists the various types of hops necessary to provide bitterness and hop flavors, and other items such as salts to prepare the water are also listed. Brewing water temperatures are specified to control other parameters such as the types of sugars that will be extracted. The process begins in the mash tun, where the malt is exposed to hot water, usually around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. The hot water activates naturally occurring enzymes in the barley, which begin to break down the starches into sugars. The sugary water is flushed out, which is called sparging, and transferred or lautered to the boil kettle. The liquid, called wort, is boiled for about 90 minutes. During the boil, the hops are added at various times to bitter and flavor the wort. The purpose of the boil is to sanitize the wort, as well as it drives off any undesirable volatile compounds through evaporation. After the boil, the wort is cooled to room temperature and pumped into a fermenter. Yeast is then added to the wort and fermentation begins. Malted barley is stored in the backroom brewing area. The malt is purchased in pre-milled 50-pound bags and organized by type. Most of the malt bill is made up of what we call base malt, with the remaining part made up of specialty malt. Specialty malts are used to give the beer various flavors, colors, and body. Examples of specialty malts would be caramel malt, chocolate malt, peated or smoked malt, and many others. There are specialty malts that add bready and biscuit flavors, malty flavors, honey flavors, roast coffee-like flavors, and others. At the Pumphouse, we use malts imported from England, Germany, and then domestically from the United States. Some of these malts cannot be purchased pre-milled, so they must be milled on-site before use. The mill cracks the kernels of barley, exposing the starch so that it can be converted to sugar during the mash. This is what the malt looks like after milling. The kernels must be cracked enough to expose the starchy center, but not so much that it turns to powder. The next step in the process is called mashing. In mashing, the crushed malt is then hydrated with hot water, typically around 150 degrees F. The hot water activates naturally occurring enzymes in the barley, which break the chemical bonds of the starch molecules into sugar molecules. This is called conversion. Conversion is necessary to provide the food for yeast to metabolize later during fermentation. Salts, such as calcium sulfate, may be added at this step to condition the water and aid in the conversion process. After each 3 or 4 bags, the mixture is stirred to ensure that all the starch is wetted and that the mash temperature is consistent. The mash temperature is monitored closely and adjusted by changing the temperature of the mixing water. The mash temp is important as it determines the type of sugars that are converted. Higher mash temps result in longer chain sugars, which translate into increased body of the beer. Ideally, the mash will be the consistency of a bowl of thin oatmeal once all the grain is in the vessel. After about 90 minutes, the conversion is complete and the resulting sweet liquid is transferred to the boil kettle in a process called runoff. Runoff is the process of separating the sweet liquid from the grain. In this process, also called lautering, the liquid is gently drained from the grain bed, much like making drip coffee. The mashing vessel is constructed with a false bottom, which allows the liquid to escape from beneath the grain bed and then be pumped gently into the boil kettle. As the sweet liquid is drained, hot water is added to the top of the grain bed in a process called sparging. This additional hot water flushes remaining sugars from the grain. The resulting concentration of dissolved sugars is measured in units of specific gravity. The sugar content is important in that it is a primary factor in the final alcohol content at the end of fermentation. The more sugar, the more alcohol. The next phase of the process is